What's the most spoiled kid you have ever seen? My friend I went to high school with got a slightly smaller iPad Pro for his birthday. He really wanted the bigger one with more memory. He proceeds to put it on record and throw it off a roof in retaliation. His parents then buy him another iPad Pro, the correct one as he put it. I don't talk to him anymore because he was a condescending ass. Edit, wow, this blew up, literally, overnight. 1. I think we all learned that I am clearly not a car guy. As far as what make/model his vehicle was, I am still not sure, but I still would like to say it's a Lotus of sorts. 2. I don't actually know his permanent city residence due to his parents effectively having two houses, like a summer house and his other house. 3. The car is not douchey, but the fact that a douche is driving that car makes really any vehicle he will own currently and in the future a Dutchmobile.
It's wild how that escalated over an iPad, but throwing it off a roof is a strange way to handle disappointment. Sounds like he hasn't changed much. As for the car situation, it's interesting how a driver's attitude can really change how people view their vehicle. The term, Dutchmobile, seems fitting for that kind of attitude.
I'm from a rich area in Dallas, Texas, so I've seen some shit. I went back for a visit and my childhood best friend was complaining that her parents were only letting her go to New Zealand instead of Amsterdam. Again, her dad is a multimillionaire and both of her teenage brothers drive Teslas. My male best friend was complaining to me that he didn't get to go to prom in a Hummer limo, only a regular stretch. He looked like he was going to pass out when I told him that I missed prom in high school to work a night shift. Glad I don't know them anymore.
Sounds like a typical day in a wealthy bubble. People stress over things that seem pretty minor. It's funny how some can be so out of touch with reality. Anyway, moving on from that, crowd seems like a good call.
My employer's two sons have everything paid for, so they never have to worry about cost. They both have everything they want and need. One of them likes expensive shiny things and he's always thrown fits until he got what he wanted from what his dad told me. For Christmas, he wanted a $1,200 55-inch Samsung Curve TV, even after his dad stated that his budget is $1,000 for each. He threw fits and got mad at his dad, and his dad, being the wimp he is, apologized and ended up buying it for him anyway. The son is 21 years old.
It's pretty wild how some people can act when they don't understand the value of money. This guy just wants what he wants, and his dad just keeps giving in. At 21, you'd think he'd figure it out, but maybe he's just not learning those lessons yet. It's strange how entitlement can shape behavior like this. Guess it's easy to lose track of reality when you never have to worry about costs.
I didn't know her personally, but I'm still friends with a guy who dated one of her friends. I heard this from him. We all went to a private, pretty expensive school in the US. The spoiled rotten girl got a degree in journalism and promptly moved to London to find a job. Her parents rented her an apartment, and I assume paid for her life, for about 2 years before she was forced to move back because she never looked for nor was employed while there. Once back in the States, she refused to live in her parents' house, citing she was a grown woman. How could this be expected of her? Her parents bought her an apartment in NYC. Last I heard, she still lives in that apartment, without a job, but has moved because it's in shitty Brooklyn, not Manhattan.
This story highlights a typical scenario of someone living off their parents. It's pretty common, especially among those who have had a privileged upbringing. She got a degree but didn't really take steps to build a career. Now she's moving around just to fit her preferences. It's interesting how some people resist the realities of life while wanting to maintain a certain lifestyle.
This will probably get lost, but this is one of my favorite spoiled kid come-uppance stories ever. Had a friend, Don, who had 2 kids, a year apart in age. When his son turned 16, Don was ready to give him his pristine Volkswagen. Don really babied his cars, so this Jetta, though about 7 years old, was truly in like new condition, a car that most normal 16-year-olds would be thrilled to have. I would have been thrilled to have it myself. So Don tells his son the plan and his son goes, "Dad, I'm not driving that car. It's a 7-year-old Jetta. I need a new pickup truck." After taking a deep breath so he didn't throttle his son, Don simply said, "Well, then, I'll drive the Jetta for 1 more year and then give it to your sister when she's 16. If you want a new pickup truck, then you'll either have to ask your mother or buy one yourself." Now Don and his kid's mother had been divorced for years and, through a series of bad choices, his ex-wife had barely 2 dimes to rub together. Don had gotten remarried to a woman who was a very successful and wealthy business owner. So his son, very mistakenly, thought that Don and his current wife would foot the bill for whatever the son wanted. How very wrong he was. Fast forward a year, his daughter is very happily driving the Jetta. Don bought himself a brand new Mazda. His son has access to neither of them. In desperation, his son bought himself a crappy $800 beater just to get himself to and from work. Lesson learned, I hope. I applaud Don for sticking to his guns and teaching his kid not to be an entitled asshole at an early age.
This story shows how giving a kid what they want without understanding the value can backfire. Don's son thought he could just demand a new truck, but the reality hit hard. The Jetta, while old, was still a good car. Now, his sister drives it, and he's left with a cheap beater. It's a solid lesson in responsibility and gratitude. Sometimes tough love is necessary.
I was on my high school's newspaper staff and we always did a section on cars in the parking lot, where we highlighted one shitty car and one super nice car and then interviewed both owners. Everyone loved it, and don't worry, the shitty car owners were always super excited to be a part of it and they always had the best stories. So we picked Snowbet Snooty Son cause she's got a nice ass brand new Range Rover or something, and after I'm the last to call, I'm forced to interview her. What's your favorite feature of the car? Well, one time I forgot to put it in park and it started rolling away, but it didn't roll that fast, so probably that. Or my G-Easy bumper sticker. Got any funny stories about your car? Yeah. When my parents first got me it, I was making faces at my friend and turned left when it wasn't an arrow and totaled it. So they got me the same one again. I managed to sneak into the article. Snooty Son has managed to keep her car undamaged since October. It was January.
This story is pretty amusing. The contrast between the nice car and the owner's antics is interesting. It's funny how the owner downplays the damage and focuses on a bumper sticker. It's a good mix of humor and reality, showing that even the fancy cars have their quirks. The whole concept of the article sounds fun too.
I was in a Toys R Us in the 90s. This mother and daughter who had to be around 12 were shopping. The girl asks if she can have some toy. The mother said, "No, we are here to get a gift for." The girl asked once or twice more and the mom declined. The girl then said, "Fuck you mommy," and took off running. The mother chased here while the kid cursed her out. Eventually, it must have ended. I went to check out and the mother/daughter are behind me. The mother not only got the toy she wanted but actually apologized.
That mix of defiance and chaos is not uncommon. Kids can get really worked up about toys, especially when they see something they want. Guess the pressure of public opinion got to her, or maybe she just wanted some peace.
In college I knew a girl whose daddy was some big shot banker or something. Made enough that the wife didn't have to work and 3 kids could go to expensive schools with little financial aid. This girl didn't have to work during college, had all her supplies and lodging paid for by daddy, and got to fly home every time there was a 3-day weekend. All on her father's dime. I once had to borrow $10 from her to pay for some food when we went out to eat. I promised I would pay her back once I got my check next week. At the time I worked for a cafe, and she seemed cool with it. Turns out she was not cool with it, and promptly bashed me on her blog and to all her other friends, calling me a bad person and a thief, because I borrowed $10. Which I paid her back. I brought up the blog posts and she was very embarrassed. Last I heard of her, she's living in a daddy-paid Manhattan apartment working part-time as a receptionist at a yoga studio. She started a new blog about the struggle. Edit, another instance, this was back in high school so the details are a little fuzzy, but there were 2 girls, one the daughter of oil money and the other the daughter of a garbage truck corporation. They always tried to outdo each other. The oil money girl got a brand new Audi convertible when she got her license.
Interesting situation. It's funny how people's backgrounds shape their views and reactions. The blog stuff is a bit over the top, especially considering her privileges. And the competition between those girls sounds like classic adolescent drama, trying to one-up each other. Just goes to show how money can impact friendships and perceptions.
For young kids, a kid whose mom catered to every whim he had and never wanted him to feel any bad feelings. She would make him separate dinners, buy him everything he asked for, fight with his teachers when they said he was misbehaving in class, that sort of thing. Anyway, one day I babysat him for her because she had a family emergency and he asked me for a PB&J sandwich. I made it for him and he started crying and said, "This sandwich is different from the sandwich I have at home." 7 years old, and I wasn't using weird ingredients or anything. For teenagers, my cousin's parents paid for everything for him: car, apartment, college, spending money. All he had to do was go to college and pass classes. This asshole dropped out of school, because I would rather sleep all day and party, lit a fire in his apartment that caused significant water damage from the sprinkler system, and started being a drug dealer.
The story about the kid is pretty telling. It shows how not facing consequences can lead to issues later on. The kid cried over a sandwich because he had grown so accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. As for the cousin, that's a pretty wild turn. Having everything handed to you doesn't always end well. It's surprising how some people can take such privileges and just throw them away.
I'm a rebel. A loner. I'm breaking the rules. I know a multimillionaire chick. Maybe 95 million in net worth. She's a friend of my ex-wife. We hang out with her on a semi-regular basis. At any rate, one day, years ago, my kid is playing some Game Boy DS shareable game with her sons. It's a game that my kid has. Her boys don't. They finally finish the game while the grown-ups are getting lit and eating way too much crap. One of her boys runs up to his mom and asks, "Can we get this game? It's really fun." She says, "Oh, money's tight. Tell you what. Put it on your Christmas list. That's only a couple of months away, okay?" Okay. And, with that, all the kids went downstairs to play whatever on the whatever. I looked at her and said, "Money's tight." She related the tale of how the kids have no idea that they have money. It was the way she was raised. She didn't discover the money until she graduated university. At first, she was pissed because her college could have been so much easier with money, but, a few months after graduation, she started thinking back on how pissed off she had been at the wealthy kids who just bought their way out of every problem that came their way, and how disgusted she had been at the way they lived their lives. She apologized to her dad and swore that she would raise her kids exactly the same way. She lives in a modest little house. Her boys wear sneakers until they destroy them. They will find out when they graduate college.
It's interesting how someone with that kind of wealth chooses to maintain a certain lifestyle for her kids. Raising them to be aware of value instead of just money can shape their perspective. It makes sense she'd want to avoid the entitlement that often comes with wealth. The kids will probably have a different view of life once they learn about their family's wealth.
My boyfriend's sister has skirted the line of spoiled rotten, but for now, she's just spoiled. She throws fits the moment school and work get a little too challenging for her, like full-on, screaming temper tantrums. Whenever she feels overwhelmed, her mom will spend hours doing her research homework and writing her papers for her. I would actually report this to the school if it wouldn't be blatantly obvious who did it. Her mom is an educator and should know better. She once had her boyfriend drive 4 hours out, and another 4 back, to come pick her up during a family trip because she didn't have a space private enough to focus on her schoolwork. Even though we were all sharing rooms and dealing with the lack of space equally, her mom ended up doing that schoolwork for her. Her parents even offered to give her the master bedroom to herself, which would have had 2 of us sleeping on the floor. I should mention, this girl is 22 and in college. She does have a sales job, which she's surprisingly really good at, which is why I think she still has hope of being a productive adult.
It sounds like she's really reliant on her mom for support, which isn't great at her age. The tantrums and being spoiled could hold her back in the long run. It's interesting she can do well at her sales job, though. Maybe there's potential for her to grow up a bit if she starts handling her own responsibilities. Hopeful outlook, I guess.
To this day, I give my sister a sizable allowance every month because my parents were having trouble making ends meet, and couldn't afford to give my sister spending money while she attended an expensive art school. One evening, I needed to attend a fancy fundraising dinner for work. Knowing my sister had no plans to go out that evening, I asked her if I could borrow the new luxury sports car that my parents had bought for her. At the time, I was driving an old, beat-up hand-me-down. She tells me that she drove 50 miles that day, so she wanted the engine to rest. I give her the most incredulous look, and my dad, sensing how flabbergasted I was, tells my sister, "Your brother gives you money, couldn't you let him borrow your car for one night?" To which she replies, "I never asked him for money." My dad reduced her to tears that evening. Edit: when she first said that, my dad didn't say anything. He always treats her like a princess, being the youngest and the only girl in the family. I said something to the effect of, "This is bullshit," and went to my room, so unfortunately I wasn't there when my dad said whatever it is that he said to her. Sister came knocking at my door 15 minutes later, crying and apologizing, and offered to let me use her car. I ended up just driving my own because fuck that shit.
Seems like a family drama there. Your dad stepping in shows he recognizes that. It's tough to see how things can escalate, and it's understandable that you stood your ground, even if it wasn't the easiest choice. Sometimes it's just better to deal with your own stuff than get caught up in all that.
My friend's mom is a VP for a company and absolutely loaded. He got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. He got his entire college paid for, and it took him years after he left the school to actually get his degree. He doesn't have a job, got fired from his mom's company, but still wears high fashion and goes on multiple international vacations a year. To top it all off, he's a staunch socialist. He goes to all the protests that shut down highways and whatnot and hates the 1%. I'm not making any claims about the viability of socialism, but when you do nothing with your life and live a higher standard of living than people who work 50+ hours a week, it's pretty tone deaf to tell them to give up more of their income.
That's a wild situation. It's interesting how he can live so well while promoting socialism. Doesn't really line up. Makes you wonder about the whole ideology when he's benefiting from the system he criticizes. Kind of a disconnect there. Definitely gives you something to think about regarding wealth and beliefs. Can't help but notice the irony in it all.
Think I'll break up the negativity in this thread with a good spoiled kid. Knew a guy in high school whose parents were loaded. I'm talking multi-million-dollar house in bumfuck Louisiana loaded. He'd invite a few of us over for dinner sometimes. I remember one time his parents brought out a big slice of chocolate cake for him and no dessert for us. We were cool with it, his house right. He demands that we get cake too because it's not fair. He'd also regularly loan us some of his allowance. He got like $1,000 a month from his parents, so sometimes he'd show up at your door with a $100 and stuff it in your pocket. All around cool dude.
Seems like that kid had it pretty good. It's interesting how some people grow up with a lot and still manage to share. The way he stood up for his friends and handed out cash shows a different side of being spoiled. Not everyone with money acts that way. It's a nice change to see someone use their privilege in a positive way. Good for him and the friendships he built.
I saw Good Morning America a couple years ago when they had a mom and dad and their 7-year-old kid. They were suing their school system because they expelled their kid. He was running around throwing chairs, desks, etc., and would not listen to anyone. The teacher and administration, instead of beating the hell out of him, sent him home until he could behave. The parents insisted he was nothing like they said, and they were just being mean. They interviewed the parents, with their son there too. He interrupted them every few seconds, screamed all the time, and refused to sit down. He would smack his dad in the head and pull his mom's hair, shove toys in their faces, all while they were saying what a sweet child he was and it was the teacher's fault. The dad looked defeated and just sat there dejected. The mom would just look at her son and smile every time he interrupted her. It was a circus, and never heard from them again.
That sounds like a wild situation. It's tough to see parents defending clearly problematic behavior, especially in public. The kid's actions point to a bigger issue, and it seems like the parents just weren't willing to see it. The whole scene must have been uncomfortable, especially with the way the parents reacted to their son's behavior.